The WTA didn't see this coming. A 20-year-old girl from the Philippines standing in front of the entire tennis world and dropping a truth so heavy it cracked the foundation of the sport's most glamorous stage. Not a rumor, not a tabloid headline, her own words, her own voice, unshaking. Aryna Sabalenka, five-time Grand Slam champion, the most feared competitor on the planet, allegedly looked across that net and said something no microphone was supposed to catch. But the cameras don't lie, and neither did Alex Eala. What happened next triggered a firestorm that spread from Manila to Melbourne, from Twitter threads to WTA boardrooms, and forced a conversation that professional tennis had been quietly avoiding for years. Stay until the very end, because the last thing Eala said, nobody in this sport was ready for it.
There are athletes who win tournaments, and then there are athletes who move entire nations. Alex Eala belongs to the second category, and she earned that place one devastating forehand at a time. Born in Quezon City on May 23, 2005, Alexandra Maniego Eala picked up a racket at 4 years old, coached initially by her maternal grandfather beside a concrete court in Manila. Nobody in that neighborhood could have predicted that this small, focused child would one day stand inside the world's most prestigious arenas, carrying a flag, a culture, and the collective heartbeat of 110 million people on her back. At 13, she left everything familiar. She crossed an ocean and enrolled at the Rafael Nadal Academy in Mallorca, Spain, an institution that doesn't hand out spots based on potential alone. It demands proof. Every single day. Eala gave it, quietly, relentlessly, year after year, sharpening her game in a foreign country where she didn't always speak the language, but always understood the work. In 2022, she reached the world #2 junior ranking. Then she did something no Filipino had ever accomplished. She won the junior girls singles title at the US Open. Standing in Arthur Ashe Stadium, tears streaming down her face, she addressed the crowd in Tagalog. The clip shattered across social media within hours. She was 16 years old. She was already a legend back home. But junior glory is a mirage if it doesn't translate. The grind of professional tennis humbled her through 2023 and into 2024. Early ITF exits, qualifying round defeats, the brutal reality of a tour that forgives nothing. There were moments where the doubters surfaced, whispers that the junior success was a ceiling, not a launchpad. Then came Miami 2025, and the whispers died. Eala walked into that tournament as a virtual unknown outside the Philippines. She walked out having dismantled Iga Swiatek, Madison Keys, and Yelena Ostapenko, all in straight sets. Former Grand Slam champions dispatched with surgical precision by a teenager wielding a forehand that felt borrowed from another dimension. The tennis world collectively dropped its jaw. From that moment, everywhere Eala competed, the atmosphere transformed. Stadium 3 at Indian Wells had fans queuing 6 hours before her second-round match against Diana Yastremska, Filipino flags stretching across every row, supporters wrapped in blankets through cold desert nights just to witness her. Her Australian Open press conference drew 196,000 views, nearly double that of Novak Djokovic, more than 6 times Carlos Alcaraz. Kim Clijsters, a former world #1, called her an absolute rock star and described her as the single biggest draw in women's tennis, ahead of Sabalenka, ahead of Coco Gauff. Filipino journalist Diane Castillo wrote plainly that Eala was already being treated like a multiple Grand Slam winner. The Philippine Sports Writers Association honored her 8 consecutive times. The WTA created an entirely new tournament, the Philippine Women's Open, because of the commercial and cultural gravity she generated. She reached a career-high ranking of world #29, first Filipino ever inside the top 30, first to beat a top 5 player, first to reach a WTA final, first to win a Grand Slam main draw match in the Open era. Every milestone carried a nation with it. But here's what nobody tells you about being that kind of symbol. The higher you climb, the more exposed you become, not just to pressure, to scrutiny, to jealousy, to the darker corners of competitive sport that television cameras don't always illuminate. And on one particular afternoon, inside one particular arena, the darkness found Alex Eala. Still here? Good, because what happened next, nobody saw coming. The atmosphere inside the arena that afternoon was electric in a way that transcended ordinary tournament excitement. Filipino supporters had arrived in extraordinary numbers, flags draped across upper tiers, coordinated chants rolling through the stands like ocean waves, signs bearing Ayla's image alongside messages written in Tagalog that her compatriots could read while the rest of the crowd could only guess at their meaning. It was an environment that transformed a professional tennis match into something resembling a national declaration. Eala played magnificently through the opening set. Her forehand, that devastating left-handed weapon, was punishing Sabalenka's wide balls with an aggression that visibly surprised the world number one. The crowd responded to every winner with an eruption that seemed to physically shake the stadium's walls. For stretches of that first set, Sabalenka appeared rattled, something her opponents rarely witness, let alone manufacture. Then the crowd noise escalated during a pivotal game in the second set. Eala had just broken Sabalenka's serve, and the Filipino contingent celebrated with a volume that seemed designed not just to support their player, but to destabilize her opponent. Chants grew rhythmic, coordinated, relentless. Sabalenka's expression darkened visibly. Between points, during a changeover, the two players found themselves near the net simultaneously, a brief, unremarkable passage of time that professional matches contain dozens of times, except what happened in those seconds was neither brief nor unremarkable. Lip readers watching broadcast footage identified specific words directed at Eala. The phrase in question, captured from multiple camera angles, appeared to reference Filipino nationality in a manner that was neither competitive trash talk nor tactical gamesmanship. It was a categorization, a reduction, the kind of language that doesn't belong inside a tennis court, a press conference, a locker room, or any space that claims to value human dignity. Ayla's reaction was immediate and visible. Her expression shifted. Something behind her eyes changed. She walked back to the baseline, bounced the ball several times with mechanical precision, and played out the remainder of the match with a composure that, knowing what she allegedly just experienced, can only be described as extraordinary. Sabalenka ultimately took the match. Across the net, Eala shook hands with the quiet professionalism that has defined her public character since she first emerged from Mallorca carrying a nation's hope and her grandfather's teachings. She walked to her courtside chair, she picked up her bag, she walked toward the tunnel, and somewhere along that short distance between the court and the locker room, she made a decision. She was going to say something. What came out of that press conference will stay with you. Don't move. Press conferences after competitive losses are exercises in emotional management. Athletes arrive composed, deliver rehearsed reflections on their performance, answer predictable questions, and exit before their real feelings can surface. The entire structure exists partly to protect players from their own raw honesty. Alex Eala sat down at that table and dismantled the entire convention. She didn't arrive visibly distressed, didn't raise her voice, didn't perform outrage for cameras trained on her face from 3 directions. She was measured in a way that somehow made every syllable land with triple the weight. A journalist asked a standard question about the match's turning points. Eala answered it directly. Then she paused, and in that pause, just 2 or 3 seconds of perfect silence, you could feel the entire room recalibrate. "I want to address something that happened on court today," she said, her voice low and deliberate. "Something was said to me near the net that I don't think reflects the values this sport is supposed to stand for. It targeted where I come from. It targeted my people." She didn't scream, didn't point fingers theatrically, didn't demand anything in that moment. She simply continued, "I'm proud to be Filipino. Every time I walk onto this court, I carry every single person back home with me. And what was said today, that wasn't just directed at me. It was directed at all of them." The room went silent in a way rooms rarely do. Within 4 minutes of the press conference stream cutting offline, screenshots began circulating. Within 40 minutes, Alex Eala was trending in 17 countries simultaneously. Filipino social media didn't just react, it detonated. Thousands of posts flooded every platform, many written in Tagalog, translating Ayra's words for family members who don't follow international tennis but understood immediately what was at stake. International tennis communities followed. Fans who had witnessed Sabalenka's golf comments, her Svitolina controversy, her Madrid incident, connected those prior events to this moment with an urgency that felt less like speculation and more like pattern recognition. One widely shared post read, "This isn't isolated. This is who she is when she thinks consequences don't apply." Another, "Ayla didn't just speak for herself, she spoke for every Asian athlete who swallowed something ugly on a court and stayed quiet because they feared the backlash." Athletes from other sports weighed in. Advocates for racial equity in professional sport amplified the story beyond tennis's traditional audience. By midnight, major international outlets had assigned dedicated correspondents to cover the unfolding situation. Alex Eala had walked into that press conference a rising tennis star. She walked out as something considerably larger, a voice, a symbol, an inflection point. But here's where it gets complicated, because Sabalenka wasn't staying silent either.
Step back from the controversy for a moment. Forget the WTA investigation timeline. Forget the competing statements and the lip-reading debates and the social media analytics measuring viral reach across 17 trending countries. Ask the only question that genuinely matters here. What does it mean when a 20-year-old woman, representing a nation that tennis historically ignored, competing on courts built for European legacies, carrying the hopes of people who stayed awake through impossible time zone differences just to watch her serve, has to sit at a press conference table and tell the world that her nationality was used against her as a weapon? What does it reveal about professional tennis in 2026? Alex Eala's journey to world number 29 is not simply athletic achievement, it is cultural disruption on a grand scale. She represents something that the WTA's traditional power structures weren't designed to accommodate: a non-European, non-American player arriving not just with talent, but with an entire civilization's emotional investment embedded in every match she plays. Filipino crowds don't follow Eala casually. They restructure their schedules, pool resources for international flights, coordinate viewing parties across a nation of 7,000 islands because she makes them visible in a world that rarely bothered to look their direction. That kind of representation carries vulnerability alongside its power. Because when you are visible in that way, when your nationality becomes the source of collective pride, it simultaneously becomes available as a target. And professional sport, for all its cosmopolitan branding, remains deeply susceptible to the hierarchies and prejudices that exist beyond its fences. Sabalenka's documented history, the Gauff dismissal, the Kostuk admission, the Svitolina moment, the repeated incidents across multiple seasons requiring public clarification, doesn't automatically confirm guilt in any single allegation. Fairness demands that distinction be preserved. But fairness equally demands this acknowledgement. A sport that consistently responds to its biggest stars' repeated controversies with carefully worded neutrality rather than structural consequence has created an environment where accountability feels conditional, where it applies differently depending on your ranking, your nationality, your commercial value. Alex Eala didn't manufacture this moment for attention. She had nothing to gain commercially from the accusation and everything to lose professionally. What she demonstrated in that press conference, that quiet, devastating courage, is precisely the character that Kim Clijsters described when she warned that Eala needs protection from the craziness that accompanies her kind of fame. Because the craziness isn't just the crowds and the flags and the viral press conferences. The craziness is also this: a young woman being forced to defend her people's dignity on a stage where she already has to work twice as hard for half the institutional support. The WTA investigation will conclude. Findings will be released or quietly buried. Statements will be crafted by communications professionals who understand precisely how much to say without saying anything irreversible. But something already shifted the day Eala spoke. Every young Filipino girl watching from a living room in Cebu, Davao, or Makati, every Asian junior player grinding through ITF qualifying draws in countries that don't know their names yet, every athlete of color who swallowed something ugly on a professional court and chose silence because the risk felt unsurvivable, they all saw a different possibility reflected in that press conference. You can speak, and the world will listen. Tennis has always been marketed as a sport of grace, precision, and dignity. Those words carry genuine weight, only when the institution enforces them for everyone equally, not just when the accused party ranks below its commercial ceiling. This isn't simply a rivalry story. This isn't the drama between a young challenger and an established champion. This is a question about what professional tennis actually values and whether its commitment to dignity extends to the players it doesn't yet consider essential to its revenue model. So here's what this channel wants to know from you, genuinely, in the comments section right now. Do you believe the WTA will hold its biggest star accountable? Or will Aryna Sabalenka's ranking protect her from consequences that would end a lesser-ranked player's career? And more importantly, did Alex Eala's courage change something permanent in the sport? Leave your answer below. This conversation is only beginning.
Alex Eala walked into professional tennis as a prodigy. She walked out of that press conference as a pioneer. 20 years old, world number 29, a nation of 110 million people behind her, and now, arguably, millions more around the globe who never previously knew her name, but will never forget her face after watching her deliver those quiet, irrevocable words. Whatever the WTA investigation determines, whatever Sabalenka's team releases as its final statement, whatever the rankings and tournament draws and sponsorship negotiations produce in the months ahead, this moment belongs to Eala, permanently. And nobody, not rankings, not influence, not 5 Grand Slam trophies, can take it back. If this story moved you, subscribe. Hit that bell, because the biggest stories in women's tennis don't always make the front page. We find them, we tell them, and we don't stop until the full picture is visible.